More Americans than ever are moving to Europe. Why? Coming up now. Hi, I'm Oliver and welcome back to the channel Ask Me Startup, where we talk about startups, small businesses and the world that surrounds them. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and pushing the notification bell because it really helps this channel to grow. If you're into business, if you plan to start a business, if you have a small startup, please feel free to download my free startup checklist, link in the description below. So today I want to talk to you about a topic I came across when I was reading the newspaper. And at first glance, it seems like it's slightly off the topics I'm talking about in this channel normally. On a second view, it actually isn't. More and more Americans are moving to Europe, specifically South Europe, like countries like Portugal, Spain, France, Greece. But why? First, let's look at the statistics. If you see here, the rise of American people living in Portugal has exploded almost. Of course, this is still a low amount of people compared to the overall population in Europe, but it seems there is a dragging force for Americans to move to Europe. Why is that? Well, turns out there are 3 to 4 reasons Americans are moving. First of all, high inflation. Reality is we have high inflation in Europe as well, but the cost of living in countries like Portugal, Spain, Greece and Italy are among the lower ones in Europe. Maybe Italy with the exemption here. Many Americans feel that they cannot afford a housing anymore in the US. Meaning the rent, for some people it's like $3,000 a month or someplace for a very small apartment. Yeah, it's quite a lot of money. And if you want to buy a house, I think the average house price in Atlanta is something like $412,000 or $420,000 US. Quite a lot of money. I would say in Switzerland it will be more expensive, but of course wages are higher here as well. But in Portugal, I mean, you can buy a house there for 120, 200,000 euros, a big nice house for 300,000. Same is true for Italy or Spain. Specifically, Italy was attracting foreigners to buy property in villages that more or less have been abandoned by the local population. And you could buy, at that time, a whole house for €1. You still had to renovate it, fix it, etc., etc. But still, today you can buy even now properties around 30 to 60,000 euros, which is roughly $30 to $60,000 US. So you see, it's been quite attractive, at least on nominal terms. The second reason here also is that countries like Portugal and Spain, they offer a golden visa. And for many Americans, that is very attractive because if you invest $350,000 to $500,000, which many of the middle class in America can do, you get the residency in the European Union. And quality of living, of course, is much better here than it is in many other places of the world. Also geographically, it's very nice located Europe. So there is a dragging or a pulling force to Europe for many Americans. The next reason is the surging dollar. I mean, currently the dollar is getting more valuable than ever before, mainly due to the fact that the euro is a crap currency, to be honest. It's falling off a cliff right now, and it has always lost value against the Swiss franc, against the US dollar as well. And so people can suddenly afford more in Europe, even though we have an inflation of, depending on where you want to go, between 8 and 10% as well. Still, costs are, in comparison to the US, much lower. That makes it more attractive for the middle class also to live and work here. And keep in mind, since remote working has been popular in the US as well, many people that used to maybe start in a startup in California and were living in an RV there can now rent a proper home, have very nice healthcare benefits as well with it, and live a very decent life in Europe. Still do their work online. Why not? Last but not least, safety. You've heard the news of mass gun shootings at schools, right? You've heard how aggressive American people have become. This is not a place to be in currently. And I'm not saying Europe is totally calm or peaceful, but in comparison, it is a very safe and relaxed place to live in. And there were specific people interviewed there, and they said specifically, I want my kids to have a normal childhood. Obviously, that's not possible anymore in the US. But that makes you very attractive because here, usually you get a pretty decent childhood for kids if you have a certain level of income, of course. Other than that, of course, you have childcare, you have health benefits, public healthcare. I mean, everything is organized in a much better and more human way than it is maybe in the US currently. So how's that relevant for you? What I want to tell you, like, Americans are third country citizens for the EU and Switzerland, meaning they are not part of our ecosystem. And if you want to work and live here, you have to fulfill certain criteria, and it is restricted in numbers. Now, I'm aware that not like everywhere, every African or Indian has the same amount to spend like the Americans, so they are going for the golden visas. Nonetheless, some are also applying to work and live here or spend their pension in the country and live here in a more decent way than they can maybe in the US. So all I'm saying is also, besides looking at a business, look at what are other ways for you to migrate to Europe if you're really interested in doing so. One of the most lucrative ones is for sure the current job market, which is growing hot and people are desperately looking for talents. Not just some talents, but the exquisite, well-educated talents. All right, everybody. I hope that short insight was helpful to you. If you're an American and migrated here, maybe you drop a comment down below and tell us your reasoning for moving to Europe. By the way, I'm not quite sure if everybody has thought that through, because some of the southern countries have had their issues, and me personally would not like to live in Italy because it's a terrible state to live in. Spain, also questionable. Portugal, I mean, they have been trying to address the issue here, right? They have been improving the situation. They have also come up with clever tax laws for people, so maybe that's a better place to be. Whatever, it's up to you. If you made it so far in the video, please subscribe, and I'm gonna see you next time!